Hey guys, John V here from Phone Reno. Right now you're watching our video comparison between the Nokia Lumia 1520 and the Lumia 1020. So it's finally here, the battle of the Lumia devices. Especially if you're an AT&T customer, you want to pay close attention just because these are the two best Windows phones out right now. So without waiting anymore, let's jump right in with this comparison. Being Lumia branded devices, they have very stylish looking designs, but there are some minor differences between them. First, there's the size disparity between the two devices here, and you can tell right away how massive the 1520 is over the 1020. And due to its massive size, we have a wider figure here with the 1520. In contrast, the 1020 is a little bit more form-fitting when we hold in the hand, but then again, that hump with the camera itself makes it feel a little bit weird when we're holding it. Some of the other minor design differences between the two is the fact that the 1020 has a flatter top and bottom edge versus a slightly curvier one with the 1520. Furthermore, it's worth noting that the 1520 is more uniform with its profile. You could see how thick the 1020 is in comparison, especially with the hump with its camera. What's nice too is that they're both constructed from the same unibody polycarbonate casing, so they have a lot of good sturdiness to them, clean finishes, and they're also available in a wide array of different colors. In the end, we're favoring the design of the 1520 a little bit more than the 1020 just because of that tapered design. You have that uniform thickness going on with it. Sure, it's beefy, but then again, still slender. Obviously, they're both Lumia smartphones, but they rely on using two totally different display technologies. With the 1520, we have a larger 6-inch 1080p IPS LCD display, giving it a pixel density count of 368 pixels per inch. While the 1020 is packing a smaller 4.5-inch AMOLED display, and its resolution stands at 768 by 1280 pixels, so it's a little bit better than 720p, giving it a pixel density count of 334 pixels per inch. Seeing that their pixel density counts are very close to each other, we don't have any issues viewing their displays. They're able to produce some very crisp looking visuals, though the larger display of the 1520 kind of helps us out a little bit better. Outdoor visibility is better with the 1520's display. That's because of the IPS LCD panel, and it has a stronger brightness output when we look at them head on. Color reproduction also goes to the 1520 just because they're a lot more realistic, but then again, some people will like the overblown and saturated colors produced by the 1020's display the AMOLED technology relies on, and with AMOLED technology it looks like it's producing the better viewing angles between them. Taking a look around their trims, they pretty much feature the same ports and buttons. So on the right side, we have the volume controls, dedicated power buttons, the shutter keys. The bottom edge, we have the micro USB ports for charging data connectivity. We have the speaker grill right here on the 1020, where it's placed on the back, towards the back on the 1520. The left side is clean with the 1020, but the 1520 packs along its SIM slot and very useful micro SD card slot, so we could actually increase its storage capacity. And on top, we have the 3.5mm headset jacks, their noise cancellation microphones, and on the 1020 we have its SIM slot. These two aren't messing around when it comes to taking photos just because they're armed with some impressive hardware. So with the 1520 we have a 20 megapixel pure view camera which features a dual LED flash, an aperture of f2.4, whereas with the 1020 we have a larger size 41 megapixel camera, and with that the sensor size is also larger. You have an LED and xenon flashes on board, an f2.2 aperture lens, and some of the things they have in common include backside illuminated sensors, you have optical image stabilization modules, and 1080p video recording at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second. And with their front-facing cameras, they're both at 1.2 megapixels. Being Lumia devices and all, these two benefit over other Windows phones just because they have access to all those Nokia branded applications we could download. For example, we have things like Nokia Here Drive Plus, we have Here Maps, you get turn-by-turn directions with them, and you also have things like Nokia Music. Like I said, the 1520 benefits over the 1020 just because it has the GDR3 updates, and for most people, they're not going to notice too much of a difference between the two, but nevertheless, there's just a slightly more enhanced experience here with the handset. For starters, when we go to the multitasking menu here, we have the ability to actually close down different apps with the X on the top right corner. We also have custom notifications with the GDR3 update, meaning that we could specify what type of sounds are applied to different things. And yes, there's even an option for us to lock the screen rotation. And finally, the GDR3 update brings forth a driving mode which allows the phone to control certain elements while we're driving. That's pretty much what separates the experiences between these two, but beyond that, when it comes to their core organizer apps, they're identical. They also feature Microsoft Office, so we have that productivity element between them, and they have the same level of personalization as well. Typing is fantastic with them, but it's just a matter of personal preference. Of course, you get a larger layout with the 1520 because of the larger display, but beyond that, they both exhibit the same qualities. They're very responsive and have killer autocorrect features. Likewise, we could say the same thing about the web browsing experience just because we have 4G LTE connectivity with both, so you have fast page loads. You have also very smooth navigational controls, but again, some people will prefer the larger display of the 1520 just because you get to see more of the web pages than anything else. The beautiful thing about Windows Phone is that the performance between devices is pretty much consistent and uniform. From a hardware standpoint, the Lumia 1520 is outfitted with the muddier specs. It's actually powered by a quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 processor, clocked in at 2.2 GHz, coupled with 2 GB RAM and an Adreno 330 GPU. Whereas the Lumia 1020 is using older hardware, it's the dual-core 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Plus processor, coupled with 2 GB of RAM and the Adreno 225 GPU. We praise the 1520 for having the more modern set of hardware, which makes it compete with some of those high-end Android smartphones, but nevertheless, the performance between the two are identical. They're both fast and responsive and exhibit very minimal lag. There's nothing different with their music players and their audio quality. Now, when we hold the two in our hand, the 1020 produces the stronger volume tones, but when we place the 1520 on the ground, it's able to actually amplify its volume output, so it's actually the same on both. We're going to have to stick with the 1520 when it comes to watching high definition videos, even though they both offer the same video codec support out of the box, just because we have a larger display, which is again more ideal for the experience. Without question, one of the best and most exciting parts about both handsets is when it comes to taking photos, just because with their camera interfaces, they pretty much mimic the style that we find with today's modern digital cameras. So we have a lot of control in different aspects of the shots. For example, we can adjust the white balance, the ISO, the shutter speed, and even the exposure. And one of the few things that they do that other smartphones don't offer is also adjusting the focus, which is very nice. And on top of that, if we want to, we could rely on their various lenses to actually give it a little bit more appeal with its shooting modes. Now comes the fun part, finding out which of these two cameras are better, the 20 megapixel camera of the 1520 or the 41 megapixel pure view camera of the 1020. Now, we're looking at their 5 megapixel samples, and quite frankly, the results are identical with them both. Take some sharp looking photos, good enough for 4x6 printouts. The only difference that we see is that there's just a hint of color saturation going on with the Lumia 1020 shots, but beyond that, they pretty much match one another in outdoor shots. Like I said, they're both able to capture a lot of fine details, but when we look at their high resolution samples, we have a clear winner, and that is the 1020. Now I'm going to quickly demo this here for you. We're looking at their higher count of samples. So if I zoom in more, you can see how they're able to produce the same sharp looking details. We can make out even some of the wording here. But if we zoom in even more, we begin to see that the details tend to be a lot more crisp looking with the Lumia 1020. If I just scroll down here, and you could see the label, how we're still able to read out even the finest of text with the 1020. Under lower lighting situations, the 1020's camera just seems to produce the brighter looking photos, but then again, we do prefer how the color accuracy is better with the Lumia 1520's camera. So it's a close race with their still image quality, but when it comes to taking 1080p high definition videos, it's no doubt the Lumia 1020 that wins by a huge margin, just because the visuals are a lot more subdued looking with the 1520, so you don't have those really sharp looking details that the 1020 is able to capture with its results. Honestly, folks, there's not one device that gives us the better calling experience, just because their earpieces are rather weak, so we're forced to actually place them very close to our ears to hear voices properly. Battery life, on the other hand, is far more superior with the 1520. That's because it's packing the larger size battery. It's a 3400 milliamp hour one versus a 2000 milliamp hour battery in the 1020. And with that, we're easily able to get close to a day and a half of heavy usage with the 1520, whereas with the 1020, it's more like the 12-hour mark. Now this is going to get very interesting, just because as we look at their current pricing options, the 1520 can be purchased through AT&T for a 2-year contract of $100 versus the $200 on-contract price point attached to the 1020. Value is something that consumers appreciate with their smartphones, and it's quite telling really which of these two handsets gives us the most bang for the buck. Without question, it's the Lumia 1520, just because when we think about its $100 pricing combined with its beefier specs, larger size, it makes a far better offering than the 1020. We're not saying that the 1020 is a bad choice. It just depends if you're more into photography and videos than anything else. That's because this is where this handset excels in the most. But when you factor in its price point, its higher price point, and also inferior specs, it doesn't scream as much value in comparison to the Lumia 1520. So if you guys want to learn more about either devices, you could check out our website, phonearena.com. John V. Thanks for watching.